On this episode of Bite Sized, we are watching and discussing the 43rd scene of the movie Twilight. For those of you watching along at home, that's from 103:19 to 104:23. And now, on to the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back, if this is not your first time, to another episode of Bite Sized. If this is your first episode, here's what's going on. My name is Ben. I am your host. I'm watching the movie Twilight one scene at a time. With a different guest every week, I find someone who wants to talk about Twilight. I get him on the show, I send him about 90 seconds of the movie, and we talk about it with little to no other context. Joining me today is an actor, a theater maker, an all-around creative, and yet another person involved with Dusk, the musical, Vinny DiPasquale. Welcome to Bite Sized.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here.
Vinny, how's it going? How are you doing? I'm going to start this interview the way I start every interview on the show. That is by asking you, what is your history with the Twilight franchise?
My history with Twilight is super lengthy, in my opinion, at least.
Well, let's get into it then.
I was first exposed to the movie, I think, when I was like 3, because I was pretty young when it came out. I was born in 2004.
Okay.
The movie came out in 2008?
Yeah, that's correct.
I guess I was 3 turning 4 because I have a late birthday. Mm-hmm. I was living in Italy at the time, which it was very huge in Italy.
Okay.
I think my sister was, I want to say she was like 11 or 12, but she was into it. All her friends were into it. So it sort of became just a very common thing to see around because all her friends would come over and they were very obsessed with it. So when the movie came out, she got the DVD and she was watching the DVD all the time. But I, being a child, was just generally very terrified of it. I didn't want to be associated with it because I didn't really understand it as a romance or anything. I thought it was a horror movie of sorts.
You just knew the vampire part of it.
Yeah, and I was I'm not into this. So I was terrified because I was a literal infant. And then as the movies came out, the obsession continued. Obviously, the mania of it all grew. So as I grew up with it, it just became so normalized. And I think we moved back to the States when I was going into first grade. So by the time I was in second grade, I was reading pretty well, and I picked up the Twilight, the book Twilight, at my second grade Scholastic Book Fair because it was on sale for $5, and I was like, "This is perfect."
Pretty good deal.
Great deal. And I was like, I know the story. This is great. And I would sort of just carry it around and skim through it. I never read it cover to cover because I was in second grade. I remember one time on the playground, I was just reading it, and this kid my age, second grade, runs up to me and is my mom's reading that book, and I was like, I don't care, get away from me, let me read. So that was just and then with that, I obviously learned what the books were all about and what the movies were all about, and I've grown to love it because it's just so ingrained into so much of my childhood.
Yeah, interesting. Obviously, you're still involved with Twilight stuff to this day, but was there ever a time when you were, I don't know, when you sort of veered away from Twilight, or has it just always been present in your life like that?
I would say the farthest I veered away is just watching the movies every so often and not actively talking about them, because even if the world was not in a state of talking about Twilight, at least as it is now, because I think everybody's a lot more in conversation about it, which I love.
Sure.
I would say the lull would have been when I was probably in middle school, so 2015 to 2020-ish. I feel I wasn't really talking about it much, but even then at home, me and my sisters would have a marathon of the movies every couple months.
Okay, then you must have seen this movie a lot of times then.
A lot of freaking times. I love this movie so much.
Incredible. So you are involved with Dusk, the musical that listeners to this show may have heard a lot about last week when I interviewed co-creator Morgan Kennedy. But tell me about your experience with the show. How did you first find out about it? How did you get involved? What do you do there? Answer all of those questions and more, please.
Well, I love Dusk so much. I love Morgan so much, just to preface. My love for Twilight brought me to the project. I think I stuck around because Morgan and Dan are really, really fantastic friends. So I was in my freshman year of college, 2022 to 2023, so last year. And I was just looking for something to do over the summer, theater-wise, and scouring the internet for any gigs in Edinburgh for the Fringe Festival, because I'd heard of it. I'd always wanted to go, and I was like, I was just begging to get an audition or even do front of house work, tech work for any show, just because I was going to be traveling abroad already, and I was like, I would love to kind of end off my trip at the festival if I could and work. And so I started searching for gigs in January of 2023, and by like, I want to say it was April, I had given up the fight because I was getting literally no responses from anybody. And I was like, I've just gotta, whatever. I ended up scheduling in like the end of my travels a few days in Edinburgh just to go to the festival, because I'm still, you know, I love theater, and it's an amazing performance festival. I still wanted to go see it while I was abroad. But I kind of had surrendered to the universe, and I was like, God, I'm just not going to be working at this festival, and it's totally fine. I'm just going to go enjoy it as a customer. And I was still just as excited. At the time, I was also doing like a huge social media cleanse. So I was like slowly getting rid of each like social media.
We've all been there.
I'm trying really hard to be off TikTok for a while. And I was off it for like most of April. And I think near the end of April, I opened it for the first time in like a very long time. And the first TikTok that was like on my For You page, like the very first thing that I saw when I opened the app was Dusk, because they were very active on TikTok last year. And I think I did remember seeing clips from their workshop that they had posted and done memes about, like the Meadow memes. Like they were fantastic, and I was laughing at them so much when I first saw them back in my deep memory. And then like I saw it again, but this time when I saw it on TikTok, they were like, we're coming to Edinburgh Fringe, like come see us. And like my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my God, like this is fantastic. And I DM'd them immediately, because I immediately was like, this, like I need to see if I could somehow be a part of this project. So I DM'd them on TikTok very kind of informally, and I was just like, is this satire, or are you guys actually going? And they were like, yeah, we're going. Like what? So they gave us their dates, and so I like kind of sent them a more formal email saying who I was, and I was like, I'd love to be a part of this project in any way that is possible, which led to, you know, a Zoom interview and some emailing. And then when I got to Edinburgh, I kind of just showed up, and it was near the end of the run. So it was really nice to see the show like in its most final form. I helped out where I could, took some videos for the social media, shadowed some meetings. It was really, really so fantastic. I got to meet everybody. I was very blessed to have gone then. I kept in contact with them, and I was like, please, if you guys are returning next year, like I will drop everything, I will go. So eventually, as plans for this summer took form, I sent in a formal audition, all that. They cast me, and the rest is history. Now I'm just headed over, and I'm very, very excited.
The rest isn't history. The rest is future. You're leaving for the UK tomorrow.
Yeah. It's all very, very soon.
How have you been able to bring your experience with Twilight into performing in this Twilight show?
Well, I've already reread the books. I'm currently rereading Midnight Sun, which is Edward's perspective, if anybody's...
Because you will be playing Edward.
I will be playing Edwin for legal reasons. I will be playing Edwin Collins.
Edwin, I'm so sorry.
No, it's a role of a lifetime. I'm so excited. I'm Team Edward till I die. I've never been Team Jacob in my life. I've never even considered the thought of being Team Jacob. I'm so ecstatic. Just in general, I'm a big book person. So like reading for any role, I'll read a lot. So this has been a really nice opportunity, because I have so much background knowledge, but also just the fact that there's, you know, concrete literature that I can look into and just kind of enjoy myself. And it's like the books are so enjoyable to read. I haven't watched the movies as much because, not to sound like a complete like asshole actor, but like I don't want to copy Robert Pattinson too much. And I already have like his character so in my body from studying it for years and years and years.
That was kind of my next question, is how much did Robert Pattinson's performance influence or inform the way you approach his character? Because, you know, he's the only one who's done it, so it's kind of hard to do Edward Cullen without doing Robert Pattinson's Edward Cullen.
And I'm gonna just say it right now, like if I do achieve Robert Pattinson's Edward Cullen on any level, like I will take that as a win.
Well, it's what the people want to see, you know.
Exactly, but also with talks with Morgan, like Edwin is not the exact same as Edward. Like it's still a parody musical, so it's meant to be more funny, a little bit more casual, which is something I've been wrestling with a lot. I think what defines Edward so much in my brain is that he's from, like, he died of the Spanish influenza. Like, he is an old-timey dude, and he talks old-timey, and he talks like he's from a book, and that's kind of like, he's so not real.
It's very true.
It's fun when you're playing a character, but I'm struggling with the formality of it. I definitely fall into very, formal thoughts, which I don't think is bad.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get into the scene at hand, the clip we're talking about today. It's about 1 minute long. Bella and Edward drive up to the Cullen house to meet the Cullens. We don't get to see any of them just yet, though, unfortunately. The first half of this scene, it basically starts with the short Volvo commercial with Edward driving through the forest, a lot of action shots of a brand new Volvo, just going through some woods, passing some trees, things like that.
Yeah.
They finally do arrive at the Cullen house. Edward gets out and whooshes around the car to open Bella's door. What a gentleman.
What a gentleman.
Even though she's, like, totally already out.
Oh, yeah. She does not need his help whatsoever. But he's there. He's opening the door for her.
Yes, even if it's, and not even if, but especially if it means being a little bit dramatic in the process.
His driving in the beginning, to some it might look like it's just somebody driving up, like a Volvo driving through some woods, but it's actually a big deal for Bella because he's not speeding. He's like trying to, in the book it's mentioned he's like driving slowly and like carefully for the first time ever, because usually when they drive like fucking maniacs, and she's just meant to like sit there and take it. Poor girl.
Yeah.
He also takes off her sweater for her when they enter, even though she's like completely taking it off herself. Like he's like hands-on ripping it off.
Again, going back to that, what you were talking about, Edward was born around the year 1900s. He's got a lot of old-fashioned values built into him.
Yeah.
Watching this scene really threw me back to my own high school days. It reminded me of the first time I went to meet, well, not the first time, but when I met my girlfriend's family at the time, the first girlfriend I had in high school, we started dating, and then I went to go see her family after. I already knew them, but I went to go meet them again after we first started dating, and the two of us had to drive out to her place, and I drove like an hour in the wrong direction. It was a lot of fun.
That's amazing.
I grew up very old-fashioned, very Southern Baptist, Southern, sort of like Edward did.
Yeah.
And back then, dating a girl meant getting permission from her father. So one day after church, her and I drove back to her family's house, and time came to get on the highway. And instead of going to the right, I went to the left. And after about 45 minutes and a couple toll booths, I was like, this isn't right. I think I'm going in the wrong direction. And then she said, yeah, I've known you've been going in the wrong direction for a while. I just thought you were going a different way. And I was like, well, why didn't you say anything? That was completely unhelpful. It was really, really a rough start to a relationship that did not last very long. I think that was a pretty terrible sign.
Yeah, definitely a rite of passage, though, that many should go through. I personally never did experience it, but I can't say I have any sort of FOMO.
I gotta say, I think you're better off for not having to go through that. Maybe one day it'll happen for you, but don't feel like you gotta force it.
I think when I was younger, like I did fantasize that it would. Like all of these are like their relationship goes through a lot of stepping stones for a very, very conventional relationship that with this and with the help of other media, like it was so ingrained into my brain. So I assumed from a very young age that this would all happen, including like engaged out of high school. Like I was ready for it all, which is nuts, like looking back, but it was so normal when I was younger.
Absolutely, for me too. That's definitely the world I grew up in. I knew, and I guess still know, people who like as soon as they graduated high school got married or started dating, and then 2-3 years later were married and having kids right away. It's a very old-fashioned love story.
Yeah.
And I can see why to some people it's appealing, but it also feels every year we get further away from the release of the book, it feels just a little bit more out of date.
It's surrealist at this point. It's insane. But I think that's, I don't know, it adds to the
It's part of the
appeal.
fantasy,
Absolutely.
you know?
And I think,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, it would be kind of boring if they, in the books, like, there are they are aware of the modernizing world, but they still very actively, their arguments against it don't waver, which is so interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think that speaks more to the author and the author's worldview than anything else. But we don't have to get too deep into
No,
Stephanie
we don't have
Meyer
to get
right
into
now.
God, no, we don't. But I love Stephanie Meyer to
You
death.
listener, you can Google that on your own and connect all the dots you need to connect to figure out how that made it in.
They're really smart. I'm sure they'll do just
Yeah.
fine.
So they're at the Cullen house. It is a very modern house. It's so fresh. That thing looks like it's like less than 5 years old. It's got to be.
They've lived in Forks before, so it's not established.
You are already... I'm so glad we're on the same page here, because this is going to be like the next 6 or 7 minutes of what we're going to talk about.
That's completely fine. But I have the part in the book where she describes the house for the first time.
Okay.
I think it's so funny. She walks in and it's like, she notices that it's like open concept. She's like, oh my God, they've done some demo day. They've gotten rid of the walls. Like, it's open and everything's open.
More than demo day. This is like, this is brand new.
It's like, well, she says that there was, they've knocked down the walls to make it a big first floor without any rooms. So she's implying that there were walls, even though she wouldn't know that.
You can't do that.
Exactly, because there's no load-bearing
walls.
Yeah, no.
To keep up the second story.
In this universe, there's no walls, and then the entirety of the back of the house is made of walls.
There's no such thing as load-bearing walls.
No, they don't. They're
apparently.
simply not needed in this structure. And like, I'm waiting for Stephanie Meyer to drop that blueprint for the house.
Yeah, seriously.
And then also, like, the one piece of furniture she names is this ginormous grand piano, which obviously comes to play later. But like, Esme and Carlisle are just standing next to the grand piano as they enter, just like ready to welcome them.
Which is very vampire, very Dracula.
It's hilarious. Like, are they standing next to the grand piano in this completely empty, like, at this point it's a warehouse. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, basically that's what it is.
It's fantastic.
But like, my question is, this house, every part of this house, interior, exterior, even the driveway looks brand new. Mm-hmm. For the shooting of it, they probably went and just found like the newest, nicest house wherever they could. Yeah. But like, for the story of it, obviously the Cullens have lived in the Forks area for a long time and are constantly going and coming back. So do they like sell their house every time they leave? Have they owned this property for a long time and just happened to build a brand new house? How did they wind up living in this particular property?
I'm going to go ahead and say that they keep possession of this property. That's what I'm going to say.
That would make the most sense.
They have so much property around, including like obviously the place in Esme Island is, I know Brazil, it's their private property, but they have in the books, like, they insinuate that when Edward's thinking about running away, like, there is a slew of places he can go because that's like their established places. Rochester, New York, where I am currently abiding, is one of those places. Yeah. That's where Rosalie's from. So I'm going to say they keep it.
That would make sense.
Not sure.
And it's also, thinking about specifically about Esme, and if my mom were a 100-year-old vampire who had access to $1 billion and could do whatever she want, she would absolutely, I mean, she redesigns at least one room of the house they live in every 3 to 4 years. So if she had $1 billion and decades, she would probably just build completely new houses a lot.
Yeah, God bless her. My mom would do the exact same thing.
Classic mom behavior.
And I think that's a huge part of Esme's character, is like, she embodies every sort of maternal, like, it's nauseating at times, but that is the entirety of her character, especially, which is, it's the most bizarre in New Moon, in the birthday scene when Bella bleeds, Esme can't stay in the room and she like cries because she's like, that's the one moment where we see her like actually almost want to kill Bella, and it just completely goes against her, I don't know, mother bear, not an evil bone in her body attitude.
You got to imagine there's a lot of time to watch HGTV when you don't have to do things like eat or sleep.
Absolutely. I'm sure she watches a lot. If not, like, I can imagine she has like a day job where she just like runs to different places, like on the continental US, and just like flips houses, maybe just like leaves them there. I could see her doing that.
That's pretty likely. They get inside. Bella comments on how open it is, just like we've been talking about.
This is incredible. It's so light and open, you know?
What did you expect? Coffins and dungeons and moats?
No, not the moats.
Not the moats.
Which makes sense, I guess, if like your whole thing is you can't be out in the sunlight in public. I'm sure it must be kind of nice to have a place where you can be in sunlight.
Yes.
The more I got to thinking about this, the more I thought that, I don't know, because I did not realize, I grew up in Houston, Texas, an incredibly sunny place most of the year. And then I moved to Chicago, which gets very dark, you know, a lot shorter days during the winter. Maybe you, Rochester, New York, can relate to this. But like, I did not know what seasonal depression or seasonal affective disorder was until I moved here.
Yeah.
And that got me thinking, man, vampires must be so sad all the time because they're not getting their vitamin D.
No, not even. It's actually horrible. And also they can't sleep. So it's like, even if they're really depressed and they're like, oh my God, like I just want this day to be over. Like that day never ends. It's just constantly going.
Yeah, that sounds pretty awful the more I think about it. Do they even need vitamin D though? They're technically dead. I don't understand how that works.
They don't need vitamin D. They don't need vitamin anything. But like the one thing that is really funny that they insinuate with, at least between the Cullens, is that just usually during the night hours, like they're most likely banging.
Okay.
That's why like Edward is so depressed, because before he meets Bella, like everybody else is completely occupied in the house during the night hours if they're not hunting, and he's just, you know.
Yeah.
I think in Breaking Dawn he says that he knows more languages because he had more free time on his hands, because he did not have time to, like, he was not spending time banging.
Yeah, that's another aspect of Edward's life that I've never thought of. He's the seventh wheel in that family. 2, 4, 6, seventh wheel. I did the math right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess he just does have a lot of time to sit around reading, and it's got to be really awkward.
No, horribly awkward. Also, the fact that like they have a sibling dynamic in which some of them are dating, and the fact that him and Rosalie were supposed to be like partners before anything else, and then he rejected her. Like it's nuts. Like it's one of the most insane dynamics. Once again, crazy that like as a 5-year-old I was like exposed and normalized. Like I had normalized these dynamics. It's so strange, but I also it's why I love it, because like it's fantastic. It's just so fantastic and beyond reality. As
I can't. Yeah, that is weird that you did read that at such a young age, because I, as a 31-year-old, I'm like, this is too much. But in retrospect, it does make a lot of his behavior in previous scenes of this movie make a lot more sense, I guess, if he just has had the worst social life conceivably possible for the last 100 or so years. I guess his awkwardness is a little more forgivable.
I mean, in the books too, though, like he does appeal a bit more, at least in the beginning, as more of a teenage boy, until he gets really intensely in love with her and then starts saying like the "you are my life now" stuff, or like I'm tired of staying away from you. That shit's nuts. But like the first day that they like actually talk in biology, he's like, you know, you can kind of imagine what it would be like if he were just another high schooler sitting at her biolab table. And like, I sometimes wonder what the rest of the franchise would have been like if Stephanie kept that charm. Like he kind of regains it in Breaking Dawn, because they've at that point like established that they're okay after the shithole that was New Moon. Like, because Eclipse is all apologizing for his actions in New Moon. That's definitely a side of Edward that I think so many people would have a different view of him if they got to see it. Like he can be playful, if not horribly awkward or insanely intense.
Speaking of horribly awkward, Bella and Edward walk up some stairs. They hear opera music, and then the scene just kind of ends. That's about all there is to it.
Well, I mean, we're cut off right before the famous line that I was praying was in this clip, where she sees the graduation caps on the wall and she goes, "Graduation caps."
Oh yeah, we're a few scenes away from that, unfortunately.
That's really sad.
Yeah. Let's start to wrap this episode up. Last question of the interview. If you had to give this scene a name, what would it be? And this is also going to be the name of the episode, so make it good.
I would say Chivalry in 4x speed.
Chivalry in 4x speed, because that is his whole deal.
That's his whole deal.
I need to learn how to spell chivalry. Vinny DiPasquale, if people want to learn more about you, maybe follow you on social media, maybe, I don't know, see you in a show in Edinburgh, Scotland later this summer, where can they do those sort of things?
Oh my God, you guys totally should and can. My Instagram is DiPasquale.Vinny, DiPasquale.Vinny. And I'm currently running an account for Edwin Collins, which is all one word, Edwin's Nothing. Check it out. Also, Dusk_musical is Dusk. And the current cast recording is out on Spotify, but it's not the same songs that you'll see in this year's Dusk.
Will there be a second cast recording then?
I think so. That's what I've heard.
Well, stay posted then. If you want to follow the show on social media, you can do so at bitesizedpod_ on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. That's all of them. I'm posting clips from the show, great little ways to share it with new people or relive old memories, whatever you want to do. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at benabear.com, BNHEBERTDOTCOM, but I haven't posted there in like months, so I don't know why you would. If you want to reach out to the show, you can send an email to myfavoritetwilightpodcast@gmail.com. All that information and more, including information on how to buy a sticker of the show's logo, can be found at twilightpodcast.com. Thank you to my editor, Ben Oxter, for putting this show together. Thank you to the band Swimwear Department for letting me use their song Mauled to Death as our theme. Thank you to Cullen Lutz, who has not yet listened to the show, but is going to one day. And I guess if he's hearing this now, that means that you are. So reach out to me, Cullen. Make it happen. You could be on this show too. That is it. That is all we have for today's episode. As we always say at the end of every episode,
Bye.
Bye. That's what we say. See you next time.
Bye, all.
It's so light and open, you know?